So we now have a camera that is following the mouse position when we drag it around the screen, kind of like this. But it's still got a slight problem to it because it's rotating around wherever it is in our little scene. It's not rotating around the player. So we're actually going to need to move our camera in the scene so that instead of being attached directly to the player like this, it's going to be attached to a thing called a spring arm. It's going to make sure that it's always a equal distance away from our player, but it's going to rotate around the player instead of around itself. So first thing I'm going to do is click on the player and create a new blank node 3D. This is going to be our pivot for the camera. I'm clicking node 3D, click create, and I'm going to call this camera pivot. So that's like the base point from the camera. That's one end of our spring. I probably don't need it on the ground there. Let's move it up to the player's head somewhere. Camera pivot is where the camera is going to be connected to. And then I'm going to add a child to camera pivot, and it's going to be called SpringArm. So let's search for SpringArm. This means that my camera is going to be stuck at a sort of equal distance away from the player at all times. It's really nice if you're walking behind walls and things. It will spring closer and further to the player based on whether it can reach you or not. And we can actually control how far away it is. You can see over here in the side panel there's a spring length. So 1 meter would be quite a close distance for our camera to be to the player. We can make this, let's just say 3 meters away from our player. And then we're going to drag our camera onto that spring arm. So we've got camera pivot, then spring arm, and then inside it we've got our old camera 3D. And instead of rotating our camera around the place, we're going to rotate these things. Our pivot is the thing that's going to rotate around the y-axis, and the spring arm is the thing that's going to rotate around the must be the x-axis, that one there. Yeah, rotating up and down. So in our script, we've got a reference to camera. That's actually dead now. That's no longer its position in the tree. I'm going to get rid of our reference to camera, and we're going to drag in a reference to the camera pivot. Hold down Control so I get that whole line written for me, and a reference to the spring arm. Hold down Control, and I get my reference to spring arm as well. So camera pivot is the one that's going to rotate around the y-axis, and spring arm is the one that's going to rotate around the x-axis, up and down. This is actually going to follow our player properly. It's not going to feel like we're moving the camera around miles behind the player. Our camera is always going to be pointed at our player. So let's try out this new version of the game. It should work mostly the same as before, but you can see as I turn my camera around, I'm always facing the player, which is fantastic. And if I did have any big walls to collide with, the spring arm would stop the camera from... There you go, you can kind of see the spring arm in action there. I get a bit closer if there's anything between me and the player. So that's fixed the first of our problems with this scene. We still need the player to change directions, but we've done a nice job there of fixing up our camera. One thing while we're here, before we finish this video, is you don't really need to look too high up into the sky. It's kind of silly to, we can go all the way around by looking upwards. Usually we clamp that value to a maximum height and a minimum height. So around this bottom one, the spring arm one that lets us look upwards, I'm going to write clamp. This whole thing that we've got, and between, let's say, minus 0.7 and plus 0.7. No, just write 0.7. That just means those values never get too high or too low. It's a bit hard to read that whole line on the screen at once, so let's just make this full window so you can see all the code there. It's all of our code for the camera so far. I've just clamped the spring arm so that you can't look up too high or look down too low. And we'll try that out. You You can see now I can't look any higher than that or any lower than that, and all of my looking is centered on the player.